Basketball, football, baseball. From Division I to Division III, it's time for College Sports Weekly with Don Macholis and Dan Underberg on the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network.
Come on.
All right, welcome in. It's College Sports Weekly. Don Macholis, along with Professor Dan Underberg, Charlie Usen on the ones and twos, guiding the ship once again on this Saturday morning. It was kind of fun, Dan, to watch Chuck Arvidian walk out of here, kind of gliding out of here on Masters weekend.
Yeah,
it's just
right,
one
yeah,
of those good weekends, isn't it?
this is his nirvana right here.
Yes. You could just tell he was in his happy place as he exited out of the studio. But welcome in. Got a lot to cover here in the world of college athletics. In a moment, we'll discuss as best we can is wherever my skill set lies, but loving the fact that the Wisconsin Badgers are playing for a national championship later today against Denver, a Division I men's hockey banner potentially getting ready to hang there in Madison. So we'll get into that in a moment. We'll recap the Division I, II, and III national championships that took place last week on the hard court. Then coming up around 9:20, Maureen Hurt, she's the head coach at Denison University. Denison, the women's Division III national champion. So Coach will join us again somewhere right around 9:20. We'll get into some headlines. And then when we get into hour two, there are a couple of major stories that obviously, Dan, affect Wisconsin with regards to college athletics. The transfer portal opened up on Tuesday morning. What a way, huh? If you're Michigan, you win the national championship, you're sitting, amongst all of the boosters and celebrating, and then the alarm goes off on your phone. You're like, I got to go because the portal just opened and we got to figure out who's staying, who's going. So we're going to get into that, especially with Wisconsin. And then coming up this week, all indications are the NCAA is going to roll out some new, we'll call them regulations with regards to eligibility.
Right.
We're going to discuss that. But real quick, Dan, it's the first time in a long time where I thought, here's the NCAA at least trying to put something in play. It's got a little common sense to it. Again, we'll talk about it, but that's at least the feeling I have, and I can already tell my friend over there disagrees.
We'll get there, but you almost set it up to fail. Now you said the NCAA has common sense. now karma is doing what karma does.
Yeah.
There's some reason that this is not going to work. So
okay, fair enough. Well,
happy Saturday.
Yeah, happy Saturday, everybody. Enjoy your coffee, your bagels, your donuts, and away we roll. But let's start with the Wisconsin Badgers, because I think if there's an athletic department in the country right now in Division I athletics that needs a win, it's Wisconsin. And you got it on the women's side in hockey, but now with the men and the potential of getting a banner, a national championship in hockey against Denver later today, I think that's a win that Chris McIntosh desperately needs in relation to what's happening on the football field and the disappointment that took place with Badger basketball once the tournament began.
Yeah, let me start out my comments this way. I've been looking forward to this all morning.
Okay.
Badger Bob Johnson.
Yes.
What is it, Don?
Badger Bob Johnson.
It's a great day for hockey.
Yes.
That is it. When Wisconsin returns to its status as a blue blood hockey program, going against another blue blood hockey program, having beaten a blue blood hockey program to get there. That's 3 blue bloods.
That was impressive.
And Michigan is good. To get that, to see what Denver did in a double overtime win against the Wolverines, you can't dismiss that at all. And to see that Wisconsin gutted out that 2-1 victory against North Dakota, this is the kind of the Final Four I think everybody was hoping for in basketball, in terms of the competition and how intense it was going to be. Yeah, it's exciting to see this team kind of rise unexpectedly. I think everybody saw them on the ascension again, but to get to the Final Four, to get to the championship game this quickly, well done by that entire program.
I think what was funny, Charlie, and I don't know if you fall into this category. I don't know where Dan does. I think Dan follows it a little bit more than I do, but I'm watching the game against North Dakota, and it reminded me of much like when I get into fandom during the Olympics,
Mm,
where suddenly you're yelling at the guys going down in the luge that they're not properly having their feet hanging over the sled
What's
at
the
the
matter
right
with
angle. It only takes watching the event twice, and suddenly you're an expert. And I can't say that I sit down and watch college hockey to the level of many that do throughout our state. But I found myself at the edge of the couch watching that game and yelling at it. And my wife looking at me like, do you even know what you're talking about? And I'm like, absolutely not. I know what, and he's not doing it right. And, you start yelling at TV because I was just so engrossed in that game, what was happening, and what a great win for the Badgers against North Dakota to get themselves to this championship game.
There's a certain amount of pride that you have just in your state, no matter like what the team is, where you're from, that you want to root for them in that sense. And I do understand that. And I also think like watching hockey, I'm not the biggest hockey fan, but I go to Admirals games all the time whenever I can. I've been trying to watch this the Frozen Four that they have going on here, same as you. And I think because I watched so many different other sports that you get the hang of it still too. So even if you don't know 100% what you're talking about, there's aspects of soccer in there if you watch soccer. There's aspects of basketball in there if you watch basketball. Like you get the hang of it and watch it, then you can kind of root it on a little bit more, and it makes it more fun.
You are making the truest hockey fan just cringe right now.
I know.
When you said soccer, you just
I know, but it is. There's rules. There's that are the
I
same.
hear you. Yep,
But
I hear you.
It's what's taking place now, and even from our state view with regards to the Frozen Four, it's a lot like as basketball nerds go in the beginning of March when the average fan finally jumps on board because there's the bracket and the office pools and everything else. That happens now, and hopefully with what took place in the Olympics, and now it's what's taking place here between the men's and hockey and the women's hockey team over in Madison. Hopefully now it's starting to bring more people into the mix wanting to watch hockey,
right?
Which is a great thing then for the sport in general to get the average fan more engaged. Going back to the game on Thursday, it was those two quick goals, obviously, in the first period, and then the Badgers literally had to hang on. But for me, the turning point in that game gave me confidence in the midst of those three periods is what happened in the second period, when the Badgers got called for those two minor holding penalties, and suddenly it was 5-on-3, and watching some of those kids, the way they laid out to block shots and just hang in and hold on, along couple that with the goalie play, that to me said this was a team that was going to figure out a way to win, even the way North Dakota came back in that final 2 minutes and change
just
where
they
they pull the goalie and they were trying to really press the issue, so to speak.
Had to.
So you're right, they had to. But again, I go back to that second period and that 5-on-3, boy, I'll tell you, that was something really impressive for that Badger team to hang their hat on.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what I've really pulled out of this is just watching Hauser in the goal.
Yeah,
just he's been a dynamic wall. He's been so good and so reactive to any shot that's coming his way, and his defenders are making that possible. The way that they're kind of blocking, the views and the angles for potential shots and getting back on defense. Wisconsin is a faster team than I think they're being given credit for to get up and down the ice. But when you get down to championship hockey, whether it's professional and you're in the Stanley Cup final, Game 7, and this is effectively what this is. What I appreciate about hockey more than any other sport, it's just warriors going against warriors. Yeah. And when the game ends, no matter no matter who wins, there's that level of respect coming across the line, the handshake line, which is one of the best things in sport. Hockey does it better than any other sport in showing mutual respect.
Yeah.
And doing that. And so that's what you're going to see, because both of those teams kind of acknowledge what you went through to get to this point. And that's when you get to this level of hockey, just the level of energy and commitment and passion, I think is just better than any other thing that you're going to see during the spring.
So, Charlie, I look at it as well when Dan was talking about Hauser at the goal there, and I think it was in the second period. I should have written this down because the brain cells are floating on a Saturday morning, but Hauser made a glove save, that when they showed the replay with all of the congestion that was taking place right in front of him, and it literally, the shot went underneath someone's arm, and yet he was able to get a glove on it and save it. And to Dan's point, it's been the goalie play as well that has been absolutely spectacular for this Badger team, and a reason why they're getting ready to play for that national championship later today.
Right. That type of hand-eye coordination to be able to just follow that puck through all the garbage that's in front of you, like we're talking about, is absolutely absurd. And I think you can, again, see this across a lot of sports. Just the level of athlete that's starting to appear at the D1 level is just what you were seeing at the professional level 20 years ago. So you're just seeing this high rise in talent, and you can see it in the goal for Wisconsin. I guess my question is, with that talent coming up, and then you're seeing plays like that happen, and then now you have this team in the national championship, the women's team already won the national championship. Does this create conflict for Chris McIntosh when he discusses spending this $14.2 million for basketball, football, and say, hey, now we got to put hockey in there because we could potentially have 2 national championship winning teams there?
I think once it becomes, the women have been consistent. The men are hopefully ascending to consistency of what we've had in the past. I think at least on the men's side, and Dan, refuted if you disagree, I think if the men over the next couple of years show consistency, then that argument takes place. But right now, I think in McIntosh's mind, it's all about football because that's the revenue generator, and that's going to be the one, if they can flip that and start putting butts back into seats at the level we were 10, 15 years ago, then we can start talking about hockey. But I think first and foremost right now, it's all about football, bar none, 1A, B, and C.
Yeah, he's in a tough spot. There's no question about it, because right after what happened with the men's basketball team, people want them to fix that. Then, and I know we're going to get to it later with the portal and just, at least we're not Tennessee women's team, right? But you're losing definitely two potential key guys. So you want to get that resolved. But to Don's point, boy, if you don't fix football, then you are looking at cutting sports. If you can't get revenue, if you can't get those butts and seats at Camp Randall, that's got to be one of the first things you fix. I think that's why we have that NIL package that passed through the legislature of Wisconsin. Is to fix football first. All
right. So this, according to the Big Ten Network, again, I'm relying on others to get me prepared for what's about to take place later this afternoon. For Wisconsin, they've scored 11 goals, Denver 15. Both have allowed 5 goals in the midst of tournament play here. Wisconsin is 1 of 6 in the power play. Denver, 1 of 10. 8 for 10 in penalty kills for the Badgers, 3 of 4 for Denver. The Wisconsin Badgers on a 92% save, Denver 95%. When I look at that, again, as a layman, as hockey people are like throwing things against the wall, the donuts have gone flying, the bagels are being tossed out the window. But when I look at that, just those basic stats from the Big Ten Network, what does it say? We're in for a heck of a game.
Yeah.
I mean, just statistically looking at what's about to take place, this is going to be a heck of a matchup tonight at 5:00 from Vegas. Why are we not in Vegas? Get Sparky on the phone. Like, how did you not fly us out to do the show live from Vegas?
Exactly.
Well, we know why. It would have been dead air right now. It'd have been like, where are you guys? What are we doing?
Yeah.
What's going on?
The entertainment per diem is what I'm looking for when we go to Vegas. But yeah, and you're looking at 2 teams that have these legacies. Wisconsin has 6 national championships. I think Denver has 7.
Yeah.
And so they're carrying that legacy with them into this game. 2 teams that really feel like this is where they are supposed to be. And so, yeah, it's one thing if you have that underdog team kind of creep up on you and kind of the hockey Cinderella.
Right.
This ain't it. This is something where everything is going to be left out on the ice.
I'll tell you what. Let's move.
Maybe some blood.
Let's move our discussion about Division 1, 2, and 3 as far as the men's basketball championship. We'll do that at headlines, because coming up after this break, we're going to talk to Maureen Hurt. She's the head coach at Denison University. Denison, the Division 3 national champions in women's basketball. So we'll get a chance to talk to Coach once again on the other side of the break. This is College Sports Weekly live from the Potawatomi Sportsbook. All right, welcome back in. It's College Sports Weekly, live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios. As always, we are powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Shout out to our friends in Green Bay, Appleton, joining us on 99.7 FM and 1440 AM on WNFL. In Wausau on 93.9 The Game, in Duluth Superior at 710 The Game, and in Milwaukee on The Fan at 1250 AM, 105.7 FM. We get now to jump to the Nicolay Law Talk and Text line and bring in Maureen Hurt, the head coach from Denison, the Division III Women's National Champions. Coach, good morning. Thanks for taking some time. We appreciate it.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, because one of the things we love to cover on our show, especially here in the state of Wisconsin, is the level of talent and the games that get played, and you can go down the entire list at the Division III level. So to have you on after winning a national championship, it's our honor to have this moment to interview you. It has to be a heck of a year in more ways than one for you over there at Denison.
Oh my gosh, what a whirlwind of a season, to go at the beginning of the season being unranked and 15-11 the previous season. Not a ton of expectations. We still had a lot returning, and then obviously to go 30-2 and win the national championship. It sounds pretty nice, and it was a lot of highs and lows, but really proud of our team and so excited for the university for it to be the first women's basketball national championship at Denison.
Yeah, you look at the game against Scranton, and one of the things that stands out just looking at the box score is just you've got a really close game for 3 quarters. I mean, it's one of those things. And then Q4, you just turned on the Jets. You outscore Scranton 22-7. And at some point during that fourth quarter, you had to realize this is really going to happen. We're going to win this national championship. What were those last few minutes like when you're like, I think I can breathe for a little bit?
Yeah, as a coach, you never want to let your foot off the gas by any means.
Sure.
And obviously Scranton is an amazing program. And when Abby Cooch and Ada Towdy hit some of those big threes in the fourth quarter, I think everybody was able to take a lot of confidence and be able to see like, oh my gosh, we're actually doing this. And Annalie Madtwange, our 6'3" center, I think got a pass, like rim running, and it was like a bounce pass that sometimes at the beginning of the year she may not have been able to catch. She got some of those. So I think it was just a lot of players making big plays down the stretch. And it's really cool because we've been so battle tested this year. Our conference, to have 4 teams in the NCAA tournament, we've been in a lot of those adverse situations where you gotta play really well in the fourth quarter to take it home. And so I think that experience really helped us down the stretch.
Coach, now 4 seasons in, getting ready for your 5th and winning the first national championship in school history. What have you really tried to drive home in building the culture of the program to ascend it to the level which, obviously you're hoisting the trophy. You're the last one standing this season, but it all falls back to what you're trying to do with your players, with your coaching staff. How has that been in developing the culture there at Denison?
Yeah, it's something from day one I really tried to emphasize, because I think if you have a team that just goes to practice for 2 hours and does their own thing when they leave, like it's not, I think a lot of people in the recruiting process talk about having a family feel, but it's another thing to really feel it when you're a part of a team. So I think everybody that's been in a part of our program the last 4 years has bought into that vision. And I think having a strong culture, a lot of the X's and O's fall into place once you have that. And I think they truly were playing for another day with each other. And I think a lot of people talk about very outcome-based things, right? You want to make it to the Final Four, win a national championship, win a conference tournament. We didn't really talk about that a lot in our practices. We more focused on how do we get a little bit better this practice, this day, and how do we fight for one more day in the NCAA tournament to be together? We want to have a shoot around tomorrow. We want to have a practice. And so I think that really helped us because the moment never got too big, and it wasn't a success or a failure based on if we achieved that outcome. It was more, what is the process we have to take every single day to be playing our best basketball in March? And I think that took some pressure off of our team to be able to just go out and play free.
So it sounds like from your description, you've done a really nice job, and the team has done a really nice job of staying grounded and kind of moving through the process of the tournament, through the season. I'm curious, because I'm sure the questions are going to start to come at you regarding next season. How do you plan to maintain that kind of, I'll call it an attitude, a culture again? Because now suddenly you are the defending national champions. There's the excitement to continue to play, but now there's a little bit more pressure. So how do you and your team kind of look forward towards the next season?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. A lot of people have been like back to back, or the expectations are really high. You're not going to be surprising anybody next year. And that's absolutely true. But when we've been doing our postseason meetings with our players this week, we've been talking about how we have to understand what got us to that point, right? It wasn't saying, hey, we want to be national champions. It was like, we really want to be very process focused and understand that everybody's growing this off season. We have to grow. We can't just be like, okay, same formula and the outcome's going to be the same thing. So all of our players have to get better this off season. Us as a staff, we have to grow and learn and pick up new things that are going to help us be a better team. Because the surprise element is not going to be there next year, which is really exciting. They've earned that right. But all of us, staff and players included, can't be complacent. Like, we really have to put in the work to make sure that we're getting better. And next year, we lost 3 seniors, but we're bringing in a good first-year class, and we have a lot returning, and they all have to get better. So I think if we do that, like, we'll have a very special team next year. But like you said, got to keep them grounded in that process.
We're talking with Maureen Hurt, the head coach out at Denison, the D3 women's national champions. Coach, you talked about that formula. This year, was there any part of the formula that involved, I'll say, a chip on the player's shoulder for going into this thing, being unranked, maybe unrecognized, where they said, all right, let me show you, let us show you what we can do here. I get it for next year that's going to have to change because you showed out and you got yourself a trophy. But going into this season, how much of that maybe played into the fact that the women were, had a little extra juice to the game because they wanted to prove people wrong who didn't necessarily recognize what the team had the potential of doing going into the start of the season?
It was definitely something I think they felt, and I think it wasn't something that we spoke about a lot, but because we don't play for the the validation of other people, and I think the people in that circle at the beginning of the season knew how good we could be. I mean, we had Ada Towdy was out, our All-American guard, with an ACL last year. She tore her ACL in the first 5 minutes of our first game. Morgan Crest, one of our post players, had torn her labrum in the season, or in a preseason scrimmage prior. And Annalie Twenge, our center, had knee problems all year. So we knew that like being healthy this year can make a big difference for us. But I think everybody in the circle knew we had the talent to be able to do what we do, and we just had to keep our head down and be really focused on just getting a little bit better, like I said, every day. And I think some of the storylines, obviously, what NYU did this year with 90-plus game winning streak, absolutely amazing. And like you said, Division III basketball, I think on the women's side is just amazing. There's so much parity. There's so much talent across the board. So we know, like, year in and year out that we can be in that conversation, but it takes a lot of work. And I think the storylines, obviously, around NYU Scranton game was awesome. And I think our team knew that, like, we could maybe slip under the radar a little bit because a lot of those storylines were there. And we knew that, we deserved to be in that national championship, though, too. And I think we played that way.
I'm curious, looking from the perspective of having built the program over the course of 4 years, and then here you are it's got to feel good to hear national champion coach, right? When you look at bringing more attention, more eyeballs onto the women's game, onto the D3 game, what are some of the things that you might like to change or see improved either by the NCAA rules or just in general? What would you like to see to help draw more attention to your teams?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think it's just more media attention. I think D3 Hoops and Hoopsville do a great job of bringing different people on and featuring a lot of the players and the coaches. And I think at the NCAA level, it's been really interesting to see that combined championship, right? Like that they have had on the men's side in Indianapolis. I think that provided a really cool experience and a little bit more attention. And so I think that's going to be interesting when we go to Indianapolis, when there's a Final Four in Indianapolis in 2 years. Hopefully we were in the right to be there. But I think just some of those things would be really nice. I thought our players had a lot of really nice touches throughout the NCAA tournament. like at our hotel, there was a balloon arch, there was Denison stuff. I think they really liked getting like the gearboxes and just those little touches and media days that they got really made them feel special. And so I think the NCAA is really working to do that. And I think it comes down to media attention and just showing people what the Division III women's basketball game is looking like, because it's tremendous basketball. There are so many great coaches and programs that are doing some really great things.
Yeah, we couldn't agree, and that's why we love covering Division III so much, because of the level of competition and the programs that exist, not only in our state but across the country. Coach, does the transfer portal come into play at all? I mean, we were kind of sarcastically laughing, Michigan hoists a trophy on Monday night, and then suddenly I'm sure coach's alarm went off and had to leave the celebration because the transfer portal opened, trying to figure out what the next move is. But in reading through some things throughout the week, I'm noticing more at the Division II and III level, where you're seeing those announcements where the student athletes are saying, yeah, I'm going to enter the transfer portal. Has that been a factor at all, at least for you at Denison right now, in trying to make sure that you recoup as many players as you can to take an opportunity to go back-to-back?
The transfer portal is trickling down to our level, absolutely. It's obviously not the huge NIL and the big money as much, especially on the women's side, I think. But it is a factor. It's not something that our program are going in there and digging in the portal right now. I think, like I said, we have 4 incoming first years in our class that are coming in next year. So we're recruiting, 98% at the high school level. Adeline Moore on our roster transferred in as a sophomore for us. And she was someone that I had talked to when I first got the job at Denison. So a lot of our transfer stuff comes from prior relationship building and maybe them finding that Denison could have been a better fit. So those are the couple transfers that we've gotten. There's been a few people that have reached out, but we're so focused on fit from a culture standpoint. We obviously play a very specific up-tempo style. So we go through a pretty hefty vetting process if it's just someone reaching out. So I think it's obviously something that we're looking at, but it's not something that we're relying on heavily for our roster building.
What has this last year taught you, if anything? As a coach, as a person, you've gone through this amazing journey, and for playing and personally and things like that. When you look back on this past year, what are the things you're going to take from it and maybe share with the team, or maybe share with yourself as you're taking a vacation or well-deserved? What are some of those things that you're going to have?
Yeah, I mean, I know that it's been talked about a little bit, but obviously I got diagnosed with the Hodgkin's lymphoma in November of 2023, and my team and going through that was really something that helped me get through it. I don't know if I would have gotten through it otherwise without college basketball, without my team, and obviously to have this journey this year where we're on top of the mountain and finishing with the national championship is something, like you said earlier, I have to keep saying it because like coming out of my mouth is taking a little bit getting used to. But I think the lessons that we've learned is just, it's all about the people you get to do it with. And I know Corey Close talked about the same thing when UCLA, but it's all about relationships and, getting the most out of this experience, right? We do a lot of X's and O's, a lot of strategic stuff as a coach, but I think what you get the most out of is the relationships you have with your players and the women on my staff that I've gotten to do it with every day. And I think what's been really cool about this journey is we've learned that like composure down the stretch really speaks volumes. And our team has been through so much adversity, right? Hearing your coach has cancer, right? And, I only had a partial response to the cancer. So they've received that type of adversity, I think. And so it's given our team a unique perspective that there's a difference between real life adversity and basketball adversity. So I think in those moments where it's really easy, a team goes on a big run, we went in WNL and it was rocking in there. We played at OWU this year and it was really, really insane game environments. But I think to know that like, it's the people you get to do it with. They went on their run. Let's go on ours. I think composure down the stretch was something that our team did really well, and I think ultimately led to our success. But yeah, it's been quite a journey, and it's just been so cool to see all of their hard work and be on top of the mountain with them this season.
Coach, we can't wish you nothing but success and health moving forward, and we thank you so much for taking some time to talk with us this morning. And again, congratulations on the Natty.
Congratulations.
Appreciate you so much. Thank you guys for all you're doing to cover Division III sports. It's amazing, and we really appreciate you guys.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Coach. That's Maureen Hurt, the head coach over at Denison. Again, the D3 Women's National Champion. We'll get to a break. On the other side of the break, we'll get to headlines, and we'll include this past week the Division 1, 2, and 3 champs on the men's side, and we'll do it next. It's College Sports Weekly, live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios, powered by Potawatomi Sportsbook. All right, welcome back in College Sports Weekly live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios. As always, we are powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Before we talk about Division 1, 2, and 3 on the men's side, which capped off their seasons last week down in Indianapolis, Dan, it was another instance again talking with Coach Hurt. You know, you talk to these coaches, and for us, other than the emails and setting up the interview, that's really the only interaction that at least I had. But then when you listen to Coach Hurt answering our questions and talking about her program and just even some of the personal battles that she's gone through, you're like, oh, I get it now. I get why that team has been successful and why starting where they did to ascend now to a national championship, they got the right person in play there at Denison, and they're going to be formidable now moving forward for quite some time.
Well, and just the way she handled the questions as we got near the end, and she brought up her kind of battle with cancer, and just doing that because as she was talking about it and talking about the relationships that were so important and how you know her team helped her through this. You know, I don't know, just getting dusty in here, you know, a little bit. You know,
I know
it was, but yeah, that's a person that was just so. You know, we've had a ton of coaches on here, and we've loved just about all of them. Right?
Absolutely,
you know, we've really enjoyed it. But there was just a level of true just kindness and authenticity that came from her. Where I understand how a recruit would be pulled into wanting to play for Denison, regardless if they won a national championship or not.
Absolutely,
so.
and it's funny because you get kind of both ends of the spectrum. In talking with these coaches, you get some of the football coaches who, just seemingly are caffeinated 24 hours a day. And once we go to commercial, we're ready to run through a wall for them. And we have no association with the school at all. But then you also have where Maureen was, which is just this very level-headed, sincere. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm sure she can choose somebody out when she needs to, but just in our conversations just to see where she was at. So let's switch gears here a little bit and talk about the Natties that took place last weekend down in Indianapolis as 1, 2, and 3 got an opportunity to hoist some trophies. And on the men's side in Division 1, it was Michigan who was able to hoist the trophy for the first time since 1989 and a 69-63 win over UConn. And I've heard it described in 1,000 different ways, especially the day after making the trek back up here to Milwaukee. The whole weekend, as far as the games went, were, I'm sorry, they just were. I had a national championship game where both teams couldn't crack 40% shooting. They were ugly games. The Arizona game, I still don't know if Arizona got off the plane. That was just an ugly matchup.
Yeah.
Illinois battled, but not to the level I thought. It was an amazing turnaround as we talked last week prior to the Final Four in what we anticipated happening and what actually happened. Now, take nothing away from Michigan. I take nothing away from UConn. Actually got more respect for Danny Hurley and UConn following that championship when he had his team line up and wait for Michigan to get done with their celebration to shake hands. I went, that's a class act, because we've seen too many times where defending champs just run off the court, towels over their head, pouting, kicking, doing whatever. This was line up, congratulate that team because they beat us tonight. And I respect that. For as many times as I like to pick on Danny Hurley and his antics on the sidelines, what I saw at the end of the game, I was like, okay, you've kind of put a couple of check marks in the plus side for me. But going back to the game, it was mucked up, for lack of a better way of saying it. It was really, we got into the paint.
Yeah.
It was old school, kind of Detroit Piston-like 90s basketball that was taking place. I was just surprised by the lack of perimeter shooting and in seeing how that game progressed. And it was just an ugly game, but give Michigan credit, they came out victor.
Yeah, well, and I look at that game, and when you've kind of finally figured it out into the second half, like, no, this is the way the game's going to be, right? This is just going to be a grinded out battle. And I don't know, to a degree, I kind of got caught into that myself. Like, who is the tougher team? Like the physically tougher team. And in that case, Charlie, I thought Michigan has been blowing people out the entire process. And what they did is showed that they won that national championship on defense. I thought every time UConn got into the paint, they did not have an answer for Michigan's bigs, and Michigan recruited well. They did everything they had to do.
It was really kind of, I guess, not disappointing, because when we were talking about the Final Four last weekend, I had said that UConn tries to just match whatever their opponent is doing, and they try to be better at that than their opponent, and Michigan was going to come in and just be Michigan, and that was what they were going to do every single time. And it did feel like UConn tried to go and say, hey, we're going to step away, like you were saying, from that three-point shot and say, Terrace Reed, go in the middle and try to do what you can against these Michigan bigs and tire them out in the middle, because you're more athletic. You may be a little bit smaller, but you can get in there and you can tire them out, except for they just dominated him.
Right.
And they kept trying to go to that. And Danny Hurley seems like kind of a stubborn coach that wasn't getting away from that.
Yeah.
And that was really frustrating. So, yes, it was a grinded out game, but when you knew UConn has other ways of winning this game and then they just weren't going about trying those other ways, that's where it got frustrating.
And the frustrating part, Charlie, to your point, and couldn't agree more, because I think it piggybacked off of what happened against Illinois. I was astounded with the size that Illinois possessed and how UConn dominated the paint and the boards.
Yep.
And I think with what they accomplished against Illinois, I think Danny Hurley going into that Michigan game said, we can replicate this. For whatever reason, we have the number for the bigs as far as the Big Ten goes. And then when it didn't happen, not to be able again to pivot and get back to some perimeter shooting. And maybe it was the realization that nobody was hitting from the perimeter, so it was all about going inside. But I really think, Dan, going into it, he thought, listen, we were able to beat Illinois at their own game in the paint. We can do the same thing to Michigan, but Michigan wasn't having it.
Yeah, I think for me, Michigan's secret sauce, I mean, it's a talented team. Don't get me wrong, but I haven't found anybody that's really found an answer defensively for Mara. They have not been able to figure out. It feels like he's got good footwork. He's really coordinated for his size. He can do different things close to the rim, a little bit away from the rim, plays with a lot of energy. And for all the attention that is given to the other elements of the roster, and I'm not saying that he's not getting any, it just feels like he was that element that could come in and step in and surprise people underneath with defense. He could get underneath, and he was able to just get his shots when he wanted to get them. I thought, for me, I realize he's not the most valuable player for the tournament, but I just didn't see anybody that could effectively defend him, and that allowed Michigan to do a lot of things they wanted to do.
And Charlie, I think what Michigan had on their side was sentiment in Yaxel Lendenborg coming in,
a little bit.
Because watching him twist that ankle knee in that game against Arizona, and if I would have seen it one more time on the Jumbotron, oh my goodness, and how he walked off. We're watching him walk his way to the medical tent, to the side, towel overhead, got back into it. Again, really the game was not in any sort of jeopardy against Arizona, but wanted to be on the floor with his guys. That determination, I think, reinvigorated Michigan and helped propel them. I don't think Yaxel was as good as he would have been, obviously, if he was 100% healthy and what that would have meant. But I think his presence played a huge factor in why the Wolverines played the way they did.
Definitely. And the way he went about coming back into that game, he goes into the interviews after the game, says, my agent told me not to go into the game anymore. He said, I can't do that. I have to be out there and I have to play. And just saying that as leader of this team throughout the entire season, it really does motivate your guys. And then when he goes out into the national championship game and decides to take a step back for a guy like Mara and be able to just be that defensive guy, do some of those things that you wouldn't normally see from your star player, that really motivates the rest of the team too. And I think that's what really got this Michigan team going, is that you had guys who are just willing to be out there for the sake of basketball instead of money, which I think a lot of guys get lost sometimes in this era.
And what you lose in football.
Yeah.
There are a lot of guys that may not even be hurt that are not going to walk into a bowl game if it's not a playoff game. And even then you might see some of that, that guy sitting out because they might lose some millions. And he took a chance for the Wolverines. He did that on his own merit, and that a lot of respect.
He went CC Sabathia on us.
Yeah.
He absolutely did. All right, real quick, because I don't want to have happen what happened last week where yours truly is rambling on, and Charlie just cuts off the mic. Gannon, 84-61 winners at the Division II level, and Mary Washington, wins at the buzzer 75-73 to take home the men's Division III title. If you get a chance, YouTube it if you didn't watch it, because the end of that game was unbelievable. And one of our now favorite coaches, Coach Zimmerman, that's a heartbreaker. I wanted to have him on this week, and I thought, let's give Coach a week to just decompress a little bit and figure out what life is like after that heartbreak. All right, hour number 1 comes to an end. We get ready for hour number 2 as we talk about the transfer portal and some new rules in the NCAA. It's College Sports Weekly, live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios. We're powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook.
basketball, football, baseball. From Division 1 to Division 3, it's time for College Sports Weekly with Don Macholis and Dan Underberg on the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network.
All right, welcome back in. It's College Sports Weekly live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios. We're powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Don't forget, you can jump in. Give us a text, 414-677-1250, and you can find us on all of our socials at Wisconsin Sports Radio. Again, shout out to the game 93.9 in Wausau, to 99.7 FM and 1440 AM in Green Bay and Appleton, to us, our home base, shall we say, here in Milwaukee, 1250 AM, 105.7 FM, The Fan, and in Duluth Superior at 710 The Game. As we get set here for hour number 2, the transfer portal is upon us. And I would say in the state of Wisconsin, the biggest name to enter the transfer portal is John Blackwell, a big-time proven player for the Badgers. In his 3 NCAA tourney games, Blackwell is averaging over 20 a game. He's shooting almost 40% from 3. He hits over 44% on those catch-and-3 shoots. And this is the discussion I think, Dan, I want to have, and that is I feel like Blackwell decided to enter the transfer portal in conjunction with the whole NBA draft as it appears now and is set now for college basketball players, in the fact that, you know, Nick Boyd, John Tonje have made their way into Badger land with 1 year of eligibility, and I think have overshadowed Blackwell a little bit. I think Blackwell, after that freshman campaign, I think was hoping to assert himself as the guy. I'm going to be the guy that everything revolves around. And then again, once Nick Boyd comes in, Blackwell playing great, but he's been the number 2 guy, so to speak. And I think he's trying to find a spot where he can play point guard and shoot and not just catch and shoot, if that makes sense. He wants to be the person in control. My question mark with regards to it is that your game? Like, are you trying to force an element into your game that really doesn't exist at a high level? Now, we're looking right now, as the reports stand, that Duke and Illinois are highly interested. And we're seeing reports of north of $4 million for that 1 year of eligibility for him to come play. That's another added piece to this component. Some of the pressures these young men and young women are feeling now with these NIL deals that are being asserted upon them, because the expectations will rise so much as we equate the dollar amounts with performance on the floor. I don't have a problem with Blackwell leaving. I think the national perspective, again, driving back last week, there were some things that were said. You know, he wants to go somewhere where he can win a national championship, and he doesn't know if that's at Wisconsin. That was one quote that was being thrown out. But I really didn't. I think the national perspective was to try and stir up some drama, because when you read the other things from Blackwell, he's very gracious and grateful for his time in Badger land. And I don't have a problem when guys have 1 year of eligibility left and want to try someplace new. I have more of a problem where they're trying someplace new, hashtag AJ Store, every single year. But to have 1 more year, fine. I just want to know somewhere in the recesses of his mind, if he's trying to implement a piece of his game that hasn't either, maybe it hasn't developed, or it just isn't there to the level it needs to be to get to the next level, which is the NBA.
Well, let's look at a couple things. Number one, if someone is offering you $4 million and you're pretty sure you're not going to get it at your current place of employment, you're probably going to take the $4 million, right? If that's kind of the going rate, and that is absolutely amazing that kind of money is at. Well, I know that money is out there, but it's being offered, you know. And then let's go along the premise that he's going for this place where he can kind of expand his game and people can see it. In that case, if it's the Dukes or the Illinois, in my opinion, that's not going to happen there. I don't think that Duke is going to let you kind of use Duke, to show off your game. You're there to win a national championship. And Illinois, for all the success that they've had, have not been in a national championship game in forever, if ever. I don't remember, but it's, Bill Self is not just suddenly going to say, okay, John, then we're going to let you play your game here and do that. So not Bill Self, but you know what I'm talking about. So I do think, Don, that you're right. I think there's a part to John's game that he wants to establish, wants to promote or market, but I don't know that it's there because here's the thing. You had 3 years at Wisconsin. You had the opportunity to be the guy, and it always evolved into somebody else. Give him credit. He was not a problem in the locker room. He allowed that to happen. He was a team player.
Yeah.
But the opportunities were there, and as cold as this sounds, he couldn't take it. And I don't mean like the pressure, but he couldn't grab that mantle of the guy and hold on to it. So, look, go, Mr. Blackwell, go make your money, have success. I wish you nothing but fondness. But at the same time, if it really is the opportunity to kind of show your game, well, okay. But then be very strategic about where you want to go. Maybe don't chase the money.
Charlie, there was one thing that I remember hearing, and I'm going to paraphrase, and this may be wrong to do, but Blackwell talking about at the end of the game against High Point, what a challenging year it's been, what it meant to him as far as challenges went mentally, and how he loved his teammates for supporting him and helping him through all of this. And listening to as Dan was talking there, I just wonder, were those challenges mentally? The fact that he's not been able to grab the mantle, that he hasn't been the guy, and trying to once again adjust to somebody like Nick Boyd and have those games mesh. If that was the mental challenge, we may hear about it in weeks to come. We may never know. But just as you were talking about that for whatever reason popped into my mind, wondering if this is where the problem has been, where Blackwell's been struggling a little bit from the mental perspective of once again having to adjust his game to fit somebody who's come in for 1 year whose skill sets are a little bit better.
I think there's definitely something to that. And I think with John Blackwell, there's a little bit of mental whiplash going on too with the way that Greg Gard is going about coaching these teams.
Great way to put it.
I think going into these seasons, he's going in with this idea that he's supposed to be this number one scorer. And I think you saw that through the first half of the season with the Badgers this year. Nick Boyd was kind of taking a back seat until the second half of the year where he just decided to take over. And then when you're being told, hey, Nick Boyd's going to take over on the scoring side of things, the offensive side of things, John, can you start being more of a primary passer? Can you be more of a primary ball handler? And then if for some reason it's not really matching to what Greg Gard's expectations are, and I think I saw this later in the season too, with Andrew Rohde kind of taking more of a toll in that ball handling role, being that kind of lead passer, not taking a whole lot of shots. I think that's something that Greg Gard would have hoped that John Blackwell could have adopted into his game a little bit more, while also still being that secondary scorer for this team and not have to hand it off. And then I think when you have games where you see John Blackwell really pass the ball well or be an aggressive rebounder, that can be frustrating to the coach. And then I think from the player's point of view, that's confusing, because 2 months ago you were telling me I needed to be this pure scorer and that these other roles can be filled by other people. And now all of a sudden I'm having to do these other roles when I am just I'm a pure scorer at this point. I think going to Duke in Illinois, while yes, he's not going to go in and be able to showcase that scoring ability, what I think he can go in and do is showcase that he can be a better passer. At Illinois, I think he can showcase he can be a better defender under Brad Underwood and that coaching staff. And I think that when he's going into those situations, I'm kind of thinking about it from the point of view of like Andrew Fisher in the Brewers minor league system right now. They have him at single A, and he's a player that his bat is an MLB level bat at this point. Like, he's hitting extremely well, but they have him at single A because he needs to work on that defense. And I think John Blackwell is kind of going in with that same kind of mindset that, yes, I may need to take a step back. My job may need to take a step back. But if that means I can prove to NBA teams that I can be that main ball handler, if I can prove to NBA teams I can be a good defender, that my scoring ability has been shown at Wisconsin, they know I have that. Can I prove somewhere else that I can do something else?
And how much of that, Dan, based on what Charlie was just talking about, then is just getting a fresh start someplace?
Yeah.
We see it time and time again at the collegiate level, at the pro level. You can go probably down to high school, where you have an athlete who's extremely talented, and for whatever reason, I mean, Charlie, you just laid out a number of factors perfectly as what could get in the mind of an athlete where, listen, I respect my time in Madison. I had a great time in Madison, love everybody in Madison, but I got 1 year left. I need to go someplace where I can clear my head, figure out where my game is in this case, and how to utilize it to a level that will allow me the next step. And I think sometimes maybe in a case like Blackwell, it's just a fresh start where I can go ahead, let life happen, get a new grip on things, and then let my game ascend as much as it can.
And if that's part of the rationale, that makes perfect sense, right? I understand that completely. I go back to the idea is if the goal is to get into the NBA, and the difficulty it is to get into the NBA right now with all the players coming from Europe, all the different ways that talent is being assessed for upside is kind of that term that you see if a part of the game isn't totally rounded yet. And I look at that, and it feels to me like when you look at the NBA, what they're looking for is scorers all the time. You've got to be able to, that's to me is like the priority, is that someone that can put the ball in the hoop. And yeah, it's great that you can rebound, and it's great that you can defend, but I think a lot of NBA coaches will tell you there's college defense and then there's NBA defense. It's just another level. Do you have a natural inclination to score? And that's why I'm kind of along the line of if Blackwell is going to go somewhere and wants to get into the NBA, you guys aren't wrong in terms of the passing element and the defensive element. But at the end of the day, can you prove to us for one more season that you can put the ball in the hoop in a variety? You've got different shots. You can hit for three. You can hit the mid-range shot. You can drive the lane. And that's why I think he needs to find a place where he can do that to get to that next level.
Alexis Bielaskauskas.
There you go.
The big Lithuanian is leaving me. I'm sorry. What am I going to do with that jersey now? Anyhow, Jack Robinson also and Ricardo Greppi are entering the transfer portal for the Badgers. And when I looked at those three, I was a little surprised when it came to Alexis. I thought the big man kind of got a little bit better each and every month, making his way through. So why he's deciding to leave, I have no idea. It'll be interesting to see where his next landing spot is and maybe get some background as to why he decided to leave Madison. The Jack Robinsons and the Ricardo Greppis of the world, I was like, I get it.
Yeah.
You're young. You got an opportunity maybe to get a bigger bag someplace else. That's the state of college basketball. Again, think about this 10 years ago. We would have walked in here and we would have done probably 2 hours on the state of college basketball in Madison. What's going on? Is Greg Gard the right guy? People are leaving. This place is going to be up in flames before we know it. And now when you look, you look through the top 25 in the transfer portal, you see big names leaving Kansas and Tennessee and Illinois. You can go any team right now. You have big names who are exiting stage left in hopes of finding, in this case, not the right educational institution or the right coach. We're looking for the biggest McDonald's bag that's got the most cash in it, and that's the school I'm going to. And that's just where we're at right now. And it just always seemingly amazes me in recency bias, so to speak, that we see this and we're like, oh, Blackwell's leaving. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Good luck to you, John. Yeah. And because it's just the way we are with college basketball right now.
And going back to the big Lithuanian, because you have mastered that name, I'm still going to murder that, right? But I really think about there's that transactional nature of college basketball now where, can I make more money elsewhere? But are you ignoring the idea that you were really set up nicely to be a starter or be six on the bench and, be a key component of this Badger team? Yet no one was denying that. And then suddenly just to say, well, the grass has got to be greener somewhere else. Maybe. I mean, that's the great kind of gamble you take when you enter the portal. And for every story of someone where it worked out, there's probably 10, 15, 20 where it didn't. or you didn't
Right.
get what you were,
Right.
you were going to get. So, you know, instead of just making that decision, and probably a lot of thought went into it prior to the announcement, you know, sit down with your coaches first, figure it out. What is their plan for you before you decide I'm going to make that decision to enter the portal? Because for me, it feels like he made a mistake. Like this was set up perfectly for you, Alexis, and now you've got to start over again.
And Charlie, this goes back to when we were all talking about the Michigan game, right? We heard about the parent and the agent. That were in the ear of the player saying no, and like, I'm good. I got to get back out on the floor with my guys. And that's a deciding factor now that I don't think was as prevalent as it was, again, a decade ago. It's the agent component that's getting into the ears. We've always had parents. Parents have always been there talking and yapping and saying you might be better off here, there, or anywhere, and getting into coach's ear like, why aren't you playing my kid more, that whole scenario. But now that agent component has made such a difference where some of these guys are getting yapped to on the phone, within text, whatever it might be, saying, enter, because I can get you. And to Dan's point, it doesn't always happen.
No, it doesn't. And I think with these agents in this whole situation too, that when they're speaking into these players' ears and you have a coach saying something in the other ear, I think in Bielowski's situation here, he's probably being told by Greg Gard and the coaching staff, hey, we kind of have to wait to see what Nolan Winter is going to do. And when you're an agent on the other side of things, you go, oh, that's disrespectful. They shouldn't tell you that. You're worth more than that. You played really well in the Big Ten tournament. We should be finding somewhere else for you. And then he's also going, hey, Nolan Winter and Austin Rapp haven't really taken that next step per se as players, as big men. Maybe we could go to Illinois. Maybe we could go to Michigan where they've been able to develop big guys more and get to that point because they're always looking for the money themselves. There's a percentage of that that's going to them. So they're going to say whatever they can that, yes, may be true to some degree that we have to wait for Nolan Winter. And that is, yeah, sure, a little disrespectful if you want to think about that way. You have a big ego now that everybody has money going around. It's going to happen. And then there's a little truth to saying, yeah, Wisconsin maybe hasn't developed these bigs as well as they've developed their wings and their guards over the past couple of years. Maybe we can find somewhere else that's going to do that job a little bit better. At the same time, it's not completely true. You've seen Wisconsin be able to develop these guys to points where they play their roles really well. And that you could do that with this player too. But when there's money involved, you throw out that kind of little bit of hope for certainties.
But there's a difference now in the college game where it's assimilating more to what we're seeing at the pro style, which is more of a free flow style of basketball, because I don't have the ability, if I'm the coach and I recruit Dan and Charlie as freshmen and we develop and I teach you the schemes and this is how we do things. And then by your third and fourth year, it becomes second nature. And while it's second nature to you, now I'm working on the freshmen again and developing them. And everybody comes up through the system where you can go ahead and work schemes and develop things to a point like we used to see. Now it's so transactional. A word Dan loves to use, and rightfully so, is that the game has become so transactional. You don't have the ability to develop some of the schematical stuff. People talk about Greg Gard. Oh, he's transformed his coaching style and his game. The Badgers are much different than what they were, let's say, in the early 2000s or 2010. Pick your time date. It's because of what the nature of the game is. I can't instill my defensive schemes the way I used to. I've got guys now maybe for a year, and the big Lithuanian as an example of that. It sounds like Nolan Winter. It's just a matter of time to, again, it's not a scholarship, sign his contract that he'll be back. And I think the same thing for Rapp. So again, Gard's got some guys that have been with the program that he can build around. But the way things go and everybody's in and out, I mean, look at the kid from BYU, Robert Wright III.
Sure.
Leaves Baylor and goes to BYU, and everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, you're going to BYU?" Well, they paid him more money, so now I'm gonna go to Mormon land and play there at BYU, and now throwing himself back in the portal after a very successful year again. So who has the time to develop anything schematically? We get you on the floor. We utilize your talents to what you guys were both talking about before between Nick Boyd and John Blackwell. Things have to alter. Things have to be more free-flowing. The game is different under the current umbrella that exists.
Yeah, and I don't know because of all the the angst about Congress stepping in and what the NCAA is going to do, and all those different things. I don't know that this is going to change anytime in the near future,
Right.
where you're just going to have these elements, and we'll get into later on about different eligibility requirements and all that, but boy, it just doesn't feel like you're going to see what we grew up with
Right.
in terms of basketball anytime in the near future, that this is going to continue to be the effective free agency for a long, long time. And you're right, you can't develop the way you want to. You can't develop into styles, and you have to evolve like guard has,
Mm-hmm.
or you're just going to be left in the lurch. It makes you wonder what Marquette is going to choose to do, and going through this process. I look at that, going back to the idea of jumping ship, with Alexis, and do I go to Illinois and stuff like that? And, they've developed their big guys, and developed them. Yes. But also they've recruited and signed very, very well. They found guys that were international, and so we can say that Illinois developed, but not in the traditional sense, is what I would argue. So if you're a transfer or a portal guy from Wisconsin going into a place where you think you can develop, be very, very careful about that, because you're just kind of a chess piece. And if this doesn't work, then you're going to move into another spot, and you're not really developing at all. You're getting stronger, bigger, faster, but developing in terms of your knowledge of the game and what it is people are trying to get you to do, it's not the same.
And here's where I hope Shaka Smart kind of coincides. That's not the right word, but with Greg Gard. Greg Gard has done a magnificent job in the last couple of years to bring in a John Tonji and Nick Boyd, who have assimilated immediately into Madison and the culture in and around Wisconsin basketball. He's done that magnificently. Yes, we've had early exits in March, and I get all the hubbub with regards to that, but the transfer portal members that Greg Gard has brought in, again, especially the stars, have done a nice job of becoming immediately Wisconsin people. And I hope that happens as well with Shaka Smart, because he's going to have to dabble a little bit in the transfer portal to keep that program up and running. So Dan alluded to what's going on with the NCAA while he was talking there. We'll take a break. The NCAA is weighing some major eligibility requirements, some changes that should be implemented, or discussed, I should say, in the upcoming week, and we'll discuss after a break. It's College Sports Weekly, live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios, and we're powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook.
What you want me to do? I'm sorry. I'm back. Let's go get him, shot. Hey, 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 hey,
All right, welcome back in. It's College Sports Weekly, live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. And we've got some news that I'm sure, Charlie, you and Steve will be talking about as the week progresses, and that's the fact that the NCAA is weighing some major eligibility change that could, in essence, reshape the landscape as far as college basketball and football goes. And just put it in a nutshell, just make it as basic as possible, is the fact that what they're saying now is every athlete will have 5 years of eligibility. That's it. It starts the moment you graduate from high school or when you turn 19. So either one of those two can be when we start the clock as far as an athlete's eligibility goes. Two things with it. I think, one, it helps, though the numbers don't necessarily show out in this fashion, those parents who hold their kid back, right?
Yeah.
I want my child to be a year older before entering college, bigger, faster, stronger. Maybe then they'll have a better opportunity to succeed, yada, yada, yada. And number two, for our foreign players coming over, I mean, we've got a number of foreign players from some articles I read that will say, yeah, I'm 21, and actually they're 25. No one's checking birth certificates, things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to wrap our arms around the fact that we're, I think, getting some severe pushback now, and in my opinion, rightfully so, for these guys who are going for their 6th, 7th, 8th year of eligibility, 27-year-olds trying to hang on and play cornerback at Miami for that 7th year of eligibility. We're trying to get rid of that. And I push back a lot of times when I hear some people on the national side, when they're commentating on their shows, when, oh, I love the way college football is and basketball is because it's grown men play. I'm like, no, I want college students participating in these games. Make the UFL your minor league system for football. You've got the G League. There you go. You don't want to go to college. You can go to the G League if your talent and skill level is such. You've got that minor league. Baseball's already got the minor league system in play.
Mm-hmm.
I really get irritated and want to push back when I hear, well, watch these 24 and 25-year-olds now playing. The game is much better. Is it? Because I watched the championship game on Monday night with older players that was, it was okay, but it wasn't necessarily some of the games I had seen earlier in the season. I like, and this marked the tape, I like what the NCAA is doing here in trying to put some parameters around it, and then we'll get into the transfer portal in just a minute. But Dan, jump in. What do you think?
No, it's something, right? And I think it's a first step of something that's going to evolve over the course of the next few seasons, because I do think, and I said this off air, there will be lawyers, which is not my line, but I think when you run into, you're telling me I can transfer once without penalty, and now all of a sudden I can't anymore. I lose a year of eligibility. Someone's going to come in, and because of the money that is in the game,
right,
someone is going to say, you're limiting fair trade. You're limiting the ability of my client to make an extra X amount of dollars to be able to do that. And that's where I think, the analogy that we like to use is you've let the tube out of the toothpaste and you're not going to be able to get it all the way back in again. And I think that's what you're going to run into, which is, my guy only played 5 games but he's still going to lose a year of eligibility. And what's the NCAA going to say? Well, that's our policy. Well, they've tried that in the past. It hasn't always worked because there's always a maneuverable way legally to get through that. It's a start. I'll give the NCAA that. And, they're looking at, scholarships to all the players on the rosters. They're looking at, how they want to approach, the draft and, when are you able, once you're in the draft, you're not coming back out of it. It's these types of things that's great. Thank you for doing this. I think they got so overwhelmed over what's happened in the last 5 years. They've just lost that, but at least now they've been motivated enough to try to address the portal situation, which in many ways is worse than what you're seeing in NIL, is dealing with, half of your men's basketball players are now in a portal situation. That's crazy.
And that's going to be the difficult part, Charlie. Again, at least it's a step. I'll take a step as far as the NCAA. We sat in this studio, Dan, back in 2016, just griping about the NCAA because they kept putting their head in the sand.
Right.
And like, oh, this will pass. Government will step in. And where we're at right now is a byproduct of 10 plus years ago, knowing what was going to happen in the state of California. So now putting parameters, Charlie, at least around eligibility. Again, I don't know how the transfer portal will play into it. I know they would love to have one, as Dan was talking about. I don't think that's going to stick. That's where I think one call, that's all, is waiting in the parking lot to talk to somebody.
Right.
Because that will be very difficult in the current state of the game. We've got to figure out a way for collective bargaining to come into this situation for the transfer portal to be resolved. But again, at least it's a step in the right direction, in my humble opinion, that we're trying to do something as opposed to hoping that Washington, D.C. will step in and eradicate all our problems.
I refuse to give the NCAA any credit in any of these
There you
situations.
go. He's staying consistent. I like that.
In this, I get it that this is a step forward for sure, 100%. But the problem is this should have been a step forward 5 years ago when 2020 hit, COVID hit, and you had all these questions about eligibility. You should have started figuring out these things and started thinking about the future earlier. And right now, yes, you're not asking the government to do anything. No, the government blew away the sand that you had your head stuck in, and now you're exposed and you have to try to do something because they said, if you don't do something, we're going to take full control of all of this. And the NCAA doesn't want that. They still want to have their own control, have their own money and all this. So they're just trying to do stuff to kind of bandage these wounds that they've created themselves. And I think that's a little frustrating to me that, yes, we're taking the right one step forward, but now that you're taking that one step forward, can we take 5 steps forward and start figuring out some of these other problems? It just feels like the NCAA they're doing the bare minimum right now for this giant issue that they've allowed to fester for this long.
And the problem again is the NCAA doesn't want to lose the control, but Dan, as we've talked, and we've talked to coaches like Coach Hurt earlier in the first hour, those championships aren't going to exist if the NCAA doesn't figure out a way to hold on to the Power Four with football and basketball and have that revenue generation. The trickle-down effect will be devastating for college athletics. It will be devastating for even those mid-majors and some of the lesser-tiered Power 5 schools who now don't have the opportunity to play Wisconsin. We just got a text from our friend and praising the NCAA, and he always likes to say the directional schools of, Mother
Sister
Teresa,
Mary of the Blind.
Sister Mary of the Blind, those
to make
first
that logo.
with those first games. But those games occur to keep those athletic departments, afloat, which is why the NCAA is so important in the current realm of collegiate athletics. Now, either the NCAA, to Charlie's points, got to do something a little bit more than the bare minimum, or the college presidents have to get together. That'll be fun, and figure out a new system by which to run. I don't know which would be worse. Put a bunch of college presidents together and watch how long it takes for them to figure something out.
Room possible.
Oh, yes. Thank you. So we're in a situation right now where we understand the problem, but the two ways of fixing it right now, it's going to take forever because, don't get me wrong, President Trump puts out the executive order saying that the NCAA has got to come up with viable ways of handling the situation. But again, it's an executive order. It's not a law passed by Congress. So guess who's in line again? Lawyer up, guys, because an executive order can be challenged, unlike, let's say, a bill passed in Congress.
Yeah, and it still can be challenged in some way or shape or form. You can pass the bill and that could still be held up in court. I'm trying to figure out how this gets fixed, and it feels like we are just, and particularly the NCAA, because it's their money. And when we get the presidents of the Power Four, they're not talking about what's good for the NCAA athlete. They're not. They're talking
The
about
student
television
athlete,
contracts.
Dan.
This,
Come on, the student
overall
athlete.
well-being of the student athlete. That is not the deal. The deal is how much money can they make on television contracts, which is eventually where this is going to go. We're seeing, in my opinion, the slow, miserable death of a portion of the NCAA before these power conferences just decide to do their own thing and keep their own money and have their own governance. Because Charlie's right. It's really hard to give the NCAA this credit when it should have been done during COVID. It would have been a way to kind of maybe not fix it completely, but to just slow the bleeding a little bit.
Perfect time of stoppage
Yeah,
to do it. Just figure it out.
To put all that together. And yeah, they chose not to.
But that perfect time, Charlie, has existed for quite some time.
Yeah,
right?
no doubt.
It's existed. There's been multiple opportunities for the higher ups to step in and put something in play. Now, every solution that we've come up with, we also understand, regardless of whether it is the Power 4, the Power 5, Washington, D.C., the NCAA, it's going to get challenged in court. But if you do it right, you won't lose every time. And that's the frustrating part. Put something in play, let it get challenged. Everything else you do gets challenged. So what's the big deal? But if you put it in play and you thought through it, maybe you come out with a win because you need a win. That's really what you need. This idea of 5 years of eligibility will be challenged.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think the way it's written, minus the transfer portal issue within it, I think will hold up in court. I really do. I mean, we always talk about the court system taking a reasonable approach. I think this is a reasonable approach. I think if somebody wants to challenge it outside of the transfer portal, I think you have the opportunity here to get a win.
Just because it's reasonable doesn't mean it's enforceable. I look at it that way.
God, I hate when you're logical.
Yeah, just because it makes sense now does not mean 5 years from now it's going to make sense. When we're still calling for when are we going to have donor fatigue, and it still hasn't happened yet. And again, the attorney's saying, "Well, wait, explain to me what eligibility is. Define that for me, because you said my one guy could do this once, but there's 3 guys in the SEC trying to maneuver and getting away with it."
But that occurs because of the current state of eligibility, right?
Right.
Because we've talked about regionality, where you can take these SEC guys in Alabama and Ole Miss, and judges are not going to rule against their eligibility, because can you imagine running for re-election in those states when the opposing judge is like, well, did you see what they did to Alabama and Ole Miss? It's time to get John Smith off the bench. Where you come up north and you've got judges who are using the law and being more reasonable. And that's why you see the distinction for Wisconsin kids who necessarily apply for that extra year of eligibility and can't get it. And almost the same scenario down in Ole Miss, Alabama, and suddenly, boom, you what, 35? Yeah, go ahead. I'm sure you're a heck of a student.
Yeah, and we're making fun of kind of, low key the Southern schools that are going to get away with this. You wait. When Ohio State wants a player, they're going to get him. Michigan wants that player to be eligible, they're going to get him. They're going to find a way. And so look, it's something, guys. I'm not arguing that.
You are.
Yeah, I'm totally arguing this. But it's what it is it's a step. It's not a perfect step. It is not going to, in my opinion, prevent the ultimate separation of Power 4 leagues into their own league for football and men's basketball and maybe a couple others. I'm to the point now. It's kind of like Giannis watch, and before that there was Aaron watch, and before that there was Brett Favre watch. Can we just do this? It's exhausting.
It is exhausting. And it's nice to know that whether I'm on the road or in person, anytime I think I got something good to stand on, my friend over there pulls the chair out from under me. All right, let's get to a break. We'll hand out some shovels on the other side. Pipe Bomb, we love you. It's College
Hey,
Sports
Pipe.
Weekly, live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios. We're powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook.
shovel the funk. I wanna shovel the funk. I wanna shovel the funk. I feel like shovel the funk. I gotta shovel the funk. You wanna shovel the funk? Do you wanna shovel the funk? Then go ahead. Go.
One last time, welcome back in. It's College Sports Weekly live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios. We're powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook as we make our way to the top of the hour. So I don't run out of time before we hand out shovels. I want to thank Maureen Hurt once again, the head coach at Denison, winners of the Women's Division III National Championship, for joining us. I want to make sure we thank Coach for taking some time out of her Saturday to make sure that she was able to speak with us, and we certainly appreciate it. All right, now let's hand out some shovels. Professor, I start with you, my friend.
This is easy. It's a great day for hockey on Wisconsin. Let's get it done, boys. One for the women and now one for the men. Let's do it.
Yeah, that'll be good. Now we go to Charlie. Charlie, what kind of audio, visual kind of enhancements
we're a little short
do you
on
have?
time today,
Okay,
so
right.
I'll keep it brief. I mentioned it earlier in the show, Yaxel Lendenberg, like him going out there and still going on the court after that gruesome injury, truly.
Right.
And then again, to say, I'm not listening to my mom. I'm not listening to my agent. I'm going out there. I just want to play basketball. Again, I wish some more guys had that type of mindset going into a tournament game like that. And like you talked about in the college football playoffs, guys just taking games off. It's so frustrating. It's
Right.
refreshing to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And it's the one time you can disagree with mom and get away with it, right?
Exactly.
So congratulations on that one as well. For me, it's the NCAA basketball tournament that took place in Indianapolis last week. To have the Division I, Division II, and Division III all in the same city, all on the same weekend. It was basketball nirvana down there in Indianapolis and made for a great weekend. And we didn't even get into the NIT championship because I did you feel like we were a bit of bad luck?
A little bit.
The way things went out from the coaches that we interviewed before tournament championships and games and how they played out. That Mary Washington game with the tip in as time was running out. I was like, stop it, please. I just felt like incredible bad luck, as we made our way in. But Indianapolis, great job again. NCAA, we'll give you some props. I have to.
You have to. You had a good weekend.
Yeah,
Can I give a shovel real quick? Why is the hockey championships in Las Vegas? Why isn't it like somewhere cooler? Like literally cooler that like it should be.
Oh, I think it's in the coolest place possible. I think it should be in Vegas.
I don't think anybody down there is agreeing with you right now.
Can you imagine the satellite images of the Miller Lite trucks and the Brandy trucks making their way down the highway? All right, let's get out of here. For Charlie Hughes and the Professor Dan Underberg, I'm Don Wachillis. Thank you, as always, for being a part of our broadcast. We're back in 6 and 22. It's College Sports Weekly, live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios, powered by Potawatomi Sportsbook.